He said, "You have something?" And then I suddenly remembered the 10 rupee note that the man had given him the night before was still in my pocket. So I pulled it out properly. Yes. He said, "Now call Giriraj." So Giriraj came, Prabhupada gave him the 10 rupee note, and he told him specifically which bank account to deposit the money in and make sure that it was written into the passbook. So that was Prabhupada's money management. I mean, every last rupee he appreciated. This is Krishna's gift. Nothing should be wasted.
When Prabhupada went to Hawaii first time, he went there I think 9 times to Hawaii, stayed there over 100 days. It was one of his favorite places. And he said that Hawaii was one. But we can see all the photographs with Prabhupada and being with him, you could see how much Prabhupada liked to be in these types of places. How relaxed Prabhupada was when you see those photographs of him sitting on the roof, giving darshans. Just very happy. Prabhupada was happy here. He called both places heaven on earth. In Hawaii, he said, if there's heaven on earth, he said it's in Hawaii. And then, of course, magically, this place also became heaven on earth. And that same evening, while I'm massaging Prabhupada under the mosquito net, he also described, he said, how much his parents cared for him. And you could see how much Srila Prabhupada cared for his parents, the love that was there. And that love he gave to all of us. But when he was talking about it at night, I would tell my mother, "You make me puris." And she would say, "It's late. Why don't I make some muri, something light?" And again, Prabhupada, you didn't take no for an answer. So again he would say, "I want puris." And again his mother thinks, "No, too late, too rich," like that. So he's talking like this. So finally he gets angry, he says, "And I want puris." And mother, she's trying to be a mother, discipline, a little discipline. He said, "But my father," he said, "if he wants puris, give him puris." And then he said, "Perhaps my father knew." And that was the end. He didn't say another word after that. And me, of course, as it was also described, I never asked questions. And I assumed I knew what it meant. Then Prabhupada he was transcendental personality. And he said to me a few times that perhaps, he said, my father knew. So I imagine his father knew. And Prabhupada also knew. He knew what was going on. And to be like that, and to have the humility that he did, to give credit to all of us for what he was doing, it was the most wonderful thing. He made everyone feel special. I was asked that once in the 90s by a disciple of one of my godbrothers, who he knew he was very special to Prabhupada. And he asked me that question, was Prabhupada had a special relationship with any of his disciples? And I knew what he thought or was hoping to hear as an answer. And I had never been asked it. And I thought briefly, and I said, yes, everyone. And that's what he did. That was the magic of Srila Prabhupada, was making everyone, including myself. I never I never could imagine Prabhupada would tell me things. He would, like these stories, wonderful stories. Twice he said to me, I like the Cowherd Boys very much, while I was reading Krishna book to him. And just to be able to be around such a person was just the most wonderful thing. To be here in this place so many years later is such a gift, as was described yesterday. It's not even the buildings, it's looking at all of you here who have done and continue to do so much to spread Srila Prabhupada's movement. As I did then, I feel the same now. I haven't done anything. But somehow Prabhupada, knowing I left Prabhupada in 1975, just a few months before Harisauri joined, in Hawaii. I became attached to Hawaii. I was a grahasta. I had a child, Mayapur Chandra. And when we got there, myself and Paramahamsa Swami, we were ready to leave. But I had to go to Prabhupada on my own and tell him. And of course, as I often was, I wasn't very straightforward. And I went into his room, and I was shaking and sweating and said, Srila Prabhupada, I want to remain here. I said, and preach. And he looked at me, and he said, my preaching's not good enough? What do you say? What do you say to such a personality? What do you say to him? But still, I was in Maya. I had thought I had another 30 years to be with Prabhupada. And I just said, Prabhupada, I want to stay here. And again he looks at me and says, I don't like to change my servants. Anyway, yes, because as we all know, all of us who travel, very difficult. And that's what I see being with Prabhupada, was to have that nice prasadam regularly from the same hands cooked. One can accomplish so much. So Prabhupada always required that. Anyway, I heard from Srutakirti Prabhu while I was there some years ago. And he said to me, he said, you know, I had gone to Japan. He said, I guess it was 1976 now. He said, and I came back. So after coming back to Mayapur, he said, I went into Srila Prabhupada's room. I offered obeisances and sat up. And Prabhupada looked at me and said, oh, you've come back from Hawaii. Very nice. Prabhupada thought it was me for a moment, because at the time, we all looked similar. When he told me that story, I was just so happy to hear. Prabhupada cared. He was happy to see me, even though I was in Hawaii. At the time, I was temple president in Hawaii. But he's our most merciful and compassionate spiritual master for all of us, for everyone in Iskcon. And I'm just very happy to be one small part, one just tiny little speck here within this Iskcon society, and pray to remain as so. And I appreciate all of you for tolerating me, and Hare Krishna.
So Srutakirti Prabhu mentioned about cooking. That was another aspect of my ignorance that was not bliss, was that I couldn't cook. Now when I first joined the party, Harikesh was doing the cooking every day. He was quite expert, so there was no problem. But then in early February of 76, we were in Mayapur and he had been given sannyas, and immediately he had to leave to go preach And the idea at that time was he was supposed to join the Radha Damodar. Dayananda and his wife Nandarani, they were there in Mayapur. So Nandarani took up the cooking after Harikesh left, so I didn't have to worry about it. And like this, wherever we traveled, somehow or another I was able to find somebody that could cook so that I didn't do it myself. At least to a certain degree I was able to do that. But then there were one or two incidences where I got put on the spot and exposed as a non-cook. We had been to the Mayapur festival, we were in Vrindavan, there were other experienced ladies that were cooking. Then when we came to Bombay in mid-April, preparing for the international tour, Kaushalya was there, so she was doing the cooking. And Prabhupada knew that when we start traveling, there was just him, there was Pushta Krishna, and there was myself. So he said, now you have to learn how to cook. I'll show you. So for 2 or 3 days, we sat, and Prabhupada, during the massage, he would stop the massage, go into the kitchen. He told me how to chop up all the vegetables, get the rice soaked, get the dal, and then he would put that in his 3-tier cooker, and he put the flame on, and then we went back into the other room. I finished his massage. After half an hour he would come back. He came back, he took the cooker off the flame, and everything was very nicely cooked. And then he divided it up, the subjis, into 2 or 3 different varieties. He did the chaunts for the dal, and the rice, of course, was put into a pot. And Prabhupada had his lunch. And he had kneaded the dough, the flour, to make chapatis. So he personally cooked 2 or 3 times in preparation for this tour, just to show me how it was done. So I was watching, I was really trying to understand what was going on, but I'm personally a totally artless kind of person, and it just didn't click on me. So when we left Bombay, we went to Melbourne. Unfortunately, Banu Swami at that time, he was a brahmachari, he was there. So whilst we were in Australia, he did the cooking. Again, I was relieved. Although I did learn how to make a couple of small preparations. One of them was this vada. You soak the dal overnight and then whip it up, and you have dahi vada and just plain vada. So Prabhupada liked the plain vada. So I was feeling confident. I've made something. Prabhupada told me, now you make this every day for me. So I was feeling a little encouraged that, I'll be able to do the cooking. Then we flew to New Zealand. We were only there for a day and a half. And I gave Prabhupada his massage. Just beforehand, I went to find whoever was the local cook so that they could make Prabhupada's lunch whilst I was doing the massage. But unfortunately, it was a very small temple, and I couldn't find a single soul. So I thought, this is it. I'm going to have to cook myself. So I followed the procedure that I'd seen. I put everything in the right section of the cooker, and then I put it on the gas flame. Then I went off to finish off the massage. When I finished, Prabhupada went to take his bath. I went into the kitchen expecting to find the cooker full of nicely cooked prasadam, and it was a disaster. I had no common sense whatsoever. So I just thought you just put the flame on. I had no idea whether it was a big flame or a small flame. So when I took the cooker off, it was finished. The dal was just like this green slime in the bottom of the cooker. It was dried out like a skin. That was all that was left of it. The rice had turned to mush. And the vegetables literally fell apart when you touched them. They were so overcooked. But that was it. I had to give that to Prabhupada because nobody else was around. So when I brought it in and put it on Prabhupada's table in front of him, he looked at it, and I'll never forget the look of disappointment that he had when he saw what I'd done. He said, "What is this?" He said, "You're so dull," he said, "you cannot learn." So I was mortified, but fortunately, the next day, we flew to Fiji. And in Fiji, there was about 20 or 30 Gujarati ladies, Vasudeva and his 2 wives and all their friends. And they were cooking up like 20 preparations a day. It was just like nectar. So there was no problem there. And then we left Fiji and we arrived in Hawaii. And then we had the same problem. As soon as we arrived, I had to cook again. So I thought this time I really tried hard. I'll get it right. I blew it the first time, but this time I'll do it good. So I cooked again, and I brought it in, and again Prabhupada looked at it. He just shook his head. He said, "You cannot learn." He said, "You don't know anything, you dull brain." So then he said, "Just you arrange to bring some gas cooker into my rooms here, and bring up the vegetables." So he was going to cook for himself. So I thought, oh, this is an absolute disaster. I'm Prabhupada's servant and he has to cook for himself. What use am I? And then I went down, and Srutakirti Prabhu was the temple president at that time. So I told him what was happening. He said, I can cook. So we went up to see Prabhupada, and Srutakirti made the offer, "Prabhupada, whilst you're here, please let me cook for you, and I know how to do it." So immediately Prabhupada was relieved. He smiled like anything. "Oh, good, very good." He didn't really want to cook for himself, of course. But as Srutakirti said, he hated to change his servants. So there's no mention that, "Oh, you cannot cook, therefore you can't be my servant." He was prepared to cook for himself and still keep me on as his servant. I mean, he had that kind of mercy. Anyway, Srutakirti cooked for the whole month. The first day he cooked, he went in to see how Prabhupada liked it. Prabhupada said, "Everything is first class except for the dal." He said, "You have murdered the dal." So I don't know that Srutakirti learned how to do the dal. We were okay for a month. It was going very nicely, and Prabhupada was very happy. Then we had to fly to Los Angeles on the 1st of June. And fortunately, Jamuna and Palika had come down from where they were staying, and immediately they did the cooking for the 10 or 11 days that we were there in Los Angeles. Then from Los Angeles we flew to Detroit. So before we flew out, I approached Rameshwara and I asked him, can we have Jamuna to travel with Prabhupada whilst he's in America so that he always gets first-class prasadam? Because Prabhupada at that time, his health was very, very delicate, especially his digestion. If you don't have good digestion, of course, that spoils the rest of your health. So I was very concerned that he get good prasadam. So Jamuna wasn't available, but Palika was. So she was added to the party as Prabhupada's regular cook. We came to Detroit. So in Detroit, Srutakirti Prabhu was there with Ambarish. They were just discussing about starting a new restaurant in Boston, I think it was. And so they came for a darshan just shortly before Prabhupada's regular noonday massage. And we had a bit of a chit-chat. I walked in with my gumsha on, ready to give Prabhupada his massage. I had a straw mat, a bottle of sandalwood oil, a bottle of mustard oil, and we were ready to go. So Srutakirti was sitting there, and he looked at me, he said, Harisauri looks like he could give a good massage. So Prabhupada smiled, he said, yes. He said, in everything he is your equal. He said, except cooking. He is a very good cook. So we had a laugh. But anyway, it worked out okay in America. And then from America we flew to London. So this was in late July. We'd had the first Ratha Yatra in New York. That was a tremendous success. Then on the 22nd, I think it was, we flew to London. And Palika stayed behind in America because Harikesh was to become Prabhupada's new secretary. Pushta Krishna Swami, after 4 months on the party, was finding it very difficult. He was having personal difficulties himself, so he dropped off the party. And to replace him, we knew that Harikesh was in Europe, So he was told, you come to London and you can take up the service of being Prabhupada's secretary, and you can also resign. But Prabhupada said, no, he said, they may have made some programs for me in London, so I must go, I can't let them down. So he made that famous statement as we were going down the elevator in that 11-story building in Midtown Manhattan. Prabhupada got in the elevator, 2 or 3 GBCs, myself, we got in with him, and Prabhupada said, I just want the benediction. He said that I can fight like Arjuna to the end. So that was his determination. But when we arrived in London, he had been laid out the whole flight, coughing, and this thick yellow mucus was coming up every couple of minutes. He was exceedingly sick. So when we arrived there, we drove to Bhaktivedanta Manor. We had to stop the car twice, and Prabhupada vomited out the side door. And when we got to the manor, then he immediately went straight up into his rooms. And practically speaking, the next 3 days, he spent most of his time in bed, just resting. He stopped taking his massage, he had a sponge bath, and that was it. Then he gradually started to recover, and Harikesh then began his new service, not just as secretary, but is also his old service of cooking. So I don't know what happened, but somehow or another he lost the knack of cooking, and because he didn't have to do too much in London, and the London trip was only about 5 days. Then we flew to France. So there was some talk that we should just fly straight back to Bombay, because London was in the London actually was England was in the middle of a big drought, and they were thinking that they were having, a very hot summer, but for Prabhupada it was very cold. There was a reporter that came and he asked Prabhupada about the weather, or the weather came up as a topic. Prabhupada said, 120 degrees, he said, I can tolerate, but less than 50 degrees, he said, I cannot tolerate. And the reporter was surprised, because in England it rarely goes above 50 degrees anyway. Anyway, so we flew to France. Bhagavan had come over. He heard that Prabhupada may not come to France, so he flew over with Pritaputra. They presented him with the first French Bhagavatam. Prabhupada was very happy. And then they pleaded with him, please come to France. There's so many devotees that want to see you. They'll become very enlivened. The weather there is much warmer. It's very nice, and you'll recuperate. So then Prabhupada relented. So we flew to France, and then we were staying at the Chateau d'Oublay, the new Mayapur project there. And again, Harikesh had to cook. And somehow or another, every single day, there was one preparation that he couldn't get right. Prabhupada would call him in the morning. He would tell him what spices he wanted and what subjuice to use, etc. And then Harikesh decided to experiment. So he made one preparation that Prabhupada, it was made from paneer, and Prabhupada liked it as a sabji. So without asking, Harikesh decided to make it into a sweet, so like crystallized sugar or something. And he took it in, and Prabhupada looked at it and he said, what is this? He said, I never asked you to do this. So Harikesh was, a bit down in the mouth. Prabhupada went into the kitchen the next day because the chapatis weren't any good. Harikesh was trying to do them on an electric, they called it a skittle or something, a flat skillet. Skillet, thank you. So somehow or another he could not get the chapatis to blow up and puff up. So Prabhupada got a bit fed up. He went into the kitchen, he rolled the dough out, threw it on the skillet, and instantly it expanded into a perfect chapati. And Harikesh is standing there looking very glum. Prabhupada took the chapati and flung it at him. He said, you think you're so intelligent you can't even make a chapati. So it became a trauma for Harikesh. And from there we were due to go to Iran. we went to Iran. Dayananda and Nandarani were there, so Nandarani immediately took up the cooking. But whilst we were sitting on the plane in Paris waiting to fly out, all of a sudden, without any warning, Prabhupada just turned to me and started complaining like anything about Harikesh's cooking. And he said he is cooking 90% for himself. So I was shocked. And Prabhupada didn't suggest that I should do anything about it. He just made the complaint and that was it. So when we got to Iran, Treya Rishi was there. He had one of these newfangled telex machines. You remember those? And so I told Harikesh what Prabhupada had said about his cooking. He wasn't very happy about that, but I told him we've got to do something about this. I said, you can't cook. It's not pleasing Prabhupada. So I decided on my own. I sent a telex via Treya Rishi to Los Angeles with instructions that Palika should immediately fly from America and meet Prabhupada here in Bombay. So we had started the world tour from Bombay. We flew out from here. And that was the last leg was from Iran back to Bombay. So we arrived on August the 13th in the late evening. And we drove here to the temple at the back there. And Prabhupada got out the car. There was a small group of devotees waiting to receive him with a little kirtan. And Palika was there. So she just arrived, I think, the day before. And as Prabhupada headed for the door to go up into his quarters, he saw Palika and he stopped and he said, "Oh, Palika, you were here." He was surprised. And then Palika, she kind of looked at sideways and she was surprised that Prabhupada was surprised, because she thought that the telegram had been sent, or the telex had been sent by Prabhupada himself, and that Prabhupada had told her to fly to Bombay and rejoin as the cook. Of course, it wasn't Prabhupada, it was me. I had taken a bit of a gamble. So when Prabhupada was surprised that she was there, she was surprised that Prabhupada was surprised that she was there. And then the two of them turned around and looked at me. And I was on the, tenterhooks. I was thinking, this is it now, I'm going to get blasted, spending so much money to just I knew Prabhupada, if I'd have asked Prabhupada, I knew he would have said, no, don't spend so much money, we'll work something out. So I did it without him knowing. So Palika was there. Prabhupada looked for a moment and he said, "All right, you're here, very good." That was my relief. Prabhupada said, "All right, very good, you're here." So then Palika became the cook for a few months here in India. So I'll finish that cooking leela. You can do it's,
I think we're already over time, and I know the Abhishek starting soon. But just to finish one little thing about the cooking. As I travel with Prabhupada in India, sometimes I was cooking in Mayapur, sometimes here. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj, of course, who was GBC, he liked what I cooked. He liked what I cooked. So he was always around for Prabhupada's Mahaprasadam. The one day he goes into Prabhupada's room. I guess he was particularly happy that day, Tamal Krishna, and he says to Prabhupada, "Srutakirti, he's first-class cook." And Prabhupada looked at me, he said, "Yes, he cooks very nice American prasadam." And it was always like that with Prabhupada. It was very rare, almost never, that you heard a compliment personally from Srila Prabhupada. But he would always glorify you to others. So this, to me, was like that, because I never heard that before, that Prabhupada said I was a good cook. But he did, and I was a good cook because I could make chapatis puff up, and they would enter his room puffed up. And that was the ecstasy, was seeing it go poof, as he would push his hand in that chapati. Yes, you poke it and then break off a piece, and you would bring in 4, 5, 6 until he said, And every time you'd slide that on, and the same, you'd offer obeisances, run out, and you just back and forth, back and forth. These were the exciting. So I think who is the MC here?
Satisfaction with my cooking. There was one preparation that Prabhupada told me to make, which was fried flat rice. And then added to that, I put some peas and small potatoes cut up into small cubes, and a bit of red pepper, salt, pepper, red pepper, and I fried that up and gave it to Prabhupada, and he liked it. So I did that a couple of times. He liked to have a snack sometimes in the evening. So one evening in Detroit, he called me in. He said, go and fetch Palika. So Palika came in, and then Prabhupada told her, he said, now I want this flat rice preparation. He said, you go with Harisauri, he will teach you how to do it. So that was my little bit of satisfaction that I was able to teach the one of the best cooks in the movement, at least something. So I wasn't without redemption. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.